Adrian Cole almost left the party before anyone noticed him. The ballroom was full of light, music, and loud voices. Glasses clinked together while people laughed and congratulated the woman standing in the center of the room. Tonight was Olivia Carter's night. After years of long hours and constant pressure, she had finally received the promotion she dreamed about. Her company had arranged a celebration in a beautiful hotel downtown. The ceiling lights shone like tiny stars, and soft music played from a live band near the stage. Waiters moved quickly between the guests with trays of drinks. Everyone seemed excited. Everyone seemed happy. But Adrian stood quietly near the edge of the room. Feeling strangely distant from it all, he watched Olivia from across the crowd. She wore a deep blue dress that made her stand out even more under the golden lights. Her hair rested gently over her shoulders, and her bright smile filled the room with warmth. People surrounded her constantly. Coworkers shook her hand. Senior managers praised her work, and new faces stepped forward to introduce themselves. Olivia laughed and spoke with confidence, the way she always did when she was in her professional world. Adrian had always admired that about her. She could walk into a room full of powerful people and still shine. Brighter than all of them. Adrian lifted his glass and took a small sip of sparkling water. He had arrived almost 40 minutes earlier, hoping to spend some time with Olivia before the crowd grew too large. But the moment he entered the ballroom, people had pulled her away again and again. At first, he didn't mind. He understood how important this night was for her. For years, he had watched her work late at the kitchen table, reading reports and preparing presentations while the rest of the city slept. Many nights, she would sigh and say she felt invisible at the office. Adrian always told her the same thing. One day, they would see her value. Tonight proved he had been right. Still, something felt different tonight. Adrian checked his phone without thinking. No new messages. He looked back toward Olivia. She stood beside the company director, listening carefully as he spoke. When she laughed at something he said, the people around them joined in. Adrian felt proud watching her. Yet a quiet loneliness slowly grew inside his chest. He remembered another night. 2 years earlier, when Olivia came home after a terrible day at work, she had dropped her bag on the floor and sat silently on the couch, staring at nothing. Adrian had brought her tea and asked what was wrong. She told him she felt like no one at the office noticed her efforts. Adrian sat beside her, wrapped his arm around her shoulders, and told her to keep believing in herself. That night she smiled again because of him. Moments like that had always made Adrian feel important in her life. Tonight he wondered if that role still existed. He decided to walk closer to her. Maybe if he reached her side, she would pause for a moment and share a quiet smile with him. Adrian moved through the crowd slowly, nodding politely to people he didn't know. Just as he reached the group around Olivia, another executive stepped forward and pulled her into a conversation about future projects. Adrian stopped 2 steps away. Olivia looked briefly in his direction, but before their eyes fully met, someone handed her a glass of champagne and began speaking again. Adrian waited. He stood there politely, hoping the conversation would end soon. A few minutes passed. More people joined the circle around her. Someone asked Olivia about her plans for the next quarter. Another person praised her leadership skills. Adrian listened quietly as she answered each question with energy and confidence. Eventually, the group shifted. Adrian found himself pushed gently back by the crowd. No one meant to move him aside. It simply happened as people gathered closer to the woman everyone wanted to celebrate. He stepped away again. Adrian walked toward a tall window near the corner of the room. Outside, the city lights glowed against the dark sky. Cars moved slowly along the streets below, their headlights forming long silver lines. The view usually calmed him. But tonight his thoughts kept returning to the ballroom behind him. He looked back at Olivia once more. She seemed completely comfortable in the center of attention. For a moment, Adrian wondered if he was being selfish. This was her big night, after all. It made sense that she needed to speak with her colleagues. Still, a small part of him hoped she would come searching for him. Minutes passed again. Adrian noticed 2 coworkers whispering near the buffet table. Another group stood near the stage, laughing loudly about something that had happened earlier in the office. The band began playing a slower song, and the atmosphere softened slightly. Across the room, Olivia raised her glass and thanked everyone for their support. The guests applauded warmly. Adrian joined them, clapping with genuine pride. Yet even as he applauded, he felt strangely separate from the moment. After the speech ended, people crowded around Olivia again. Cameras flashed while someone took photos of her with the management team. Adrian considered walking over once more, but the circle around her looked even tighter now instead. He slipped quietly through a side door and stepped onto the balcony. Cool night air touched his face immediately. The noise from the ballroom became softer behind the glass door. Adrian leaned against the railing and looked out at the city again. The sky above was deep and calm. Far below, traffic lights changed colors slowly, guiding the steady flow of cars. Adrian closed his eyes for a moment. He remembered the first time he and Olivia met. It happened in a small cafe near the university where she once studied. She had been nervous about an important interview and kept practicing answers under her breath while waiting for her coffee. Adrian sat at the next table and accidentally knocked over his cup while trying to help her relax. Coffee spilled everywhere, including on his own shirt. Olivia laughed, so hard that she nearly forgot about her interview. That laugh had stayed with him ever since. 3 years later, he still loved hearing it. The balcony door opened behind him. Adrian turned slightly, expecting Olivia to appear. But instead, 2 coworkers stepped outside. They talked loudly about office gossip and lit cigarettes without. Noticing him standing near the railing, Adrian turned back toward the city. For a brief moment, he wondered if Olivia even knew he had stepped outside. Inside the ballroom, music played again and laughter echoed faintly through the glass door. Adrian waited. 5 minutes, then another 5. The door never opened again. A quiet realization slowly settled in his mind. Tonight was the most important night of Olivia's career, and she deserved every bit of attention she was receiving. But in the middle of that celebration, Adrian had become almost invisible. The thought didn't make him angry, it simply made him sad. Adrian pushed himself gently away from the railing and looked back through the glass door one last time. Olivia stood near the center of the room again, smiling while someone spoke beside her. She looked happy. She looked confident. She looked like someone stepping into a new chapter of life. And Adrian suddenly wondered if that new chapter included him at all, without making any noise. He opened the balcony door and stepped inside. No one noticed him walking along the wall toward the exit hallway. Conversations continued. Glasses clinked. Music played. Adrian moved quietly past the coat racks and toward the elevators. For a moment, he paused near the entrance of the ballroom. He looked back once more. Olivia laughed again at something someone said. The sound was warm and familiar. But tonight it didn't reach him the way it used to. Adrian pressed the elevator button. The doors opened quickly. He stepped inside alone. As the elevator moved downward, he felt the strange mixture of love and disappointment inside his chest. He didn't blame Olivia completely. Success brought new pressures, new expectations, and new attention from people who suddenly cared about her. Still, a relationship needed space to. And tonight, there had been no space for him when the elevator reached the lobby. Adrian walked through the quiet hotel entrance and stepped outside. The cool air felt fresh compared to the warm ballroom above. Cars waited along the street, and a few guests stood near the door speaking softly before leaving. Adrian walked past them without stopping. Behind him, the party continued several floors above, filled with music and celebration. No one noticed that Adrian Cole had disappeared into the night. But nearly an hour later, when Olivia finally looked around the room again between conversations, she felt a strange feeling in her chest. Her eyes searched the crowd. Adrian wasn't near the window. He wasn't near the stage. He wasn't standing by the drinks table either. Olivia frowned slightly and glanced toward the entrance hallway. For the first time that evening, she realized something was wrong, because Adrian had always been there beside her during important moments, always and suddenly. On the biggest night of her career, he was gone. Olivia Carter couldn't sleep that night. The apartment felt unusually quiet, too quiet, as if the energy of the celebration had been sucked out the moment Adrian disappeared. She paced the living room, twisting her hands nervously, trying to make sense of the evening. Her promotion party had been everything she dreamed of: lights, music, applause, congratulations, but the memory of Adrian's quiet presence hovering at the edge of the room kept her restless. Every time she thought of his expectant eyes, waiting for her attention, she felt a stab of guilt. She hadn't meant to ignore him. She hadn't realized how much she was wrapped up in the attention and excitement of her big night. She had only wanted to celebrate, to feel recognized for years of work, and yet in doing so, she had overlooked the one person who had always been there for her. She sank onto the couch and picked up her phone. Her fingers trembled as she typed a message to him. "Where did you go tonight?" She stared at the screen for a long time before hitting send. Then she waited. Minutes stretched into hours. The quiet hum of the apartment, normally comforting, now pressed on her. No reply came. Her heart sank a little more with every passing moment. She remembered seeing Adrian near the balcony during the party. How he had drifted away quietly. How she hadn't gone after him. She had assumed he would stay, as he always did. She had assumed he would be there, patient, like he always had been. But now he wasn't, and the weight of that absence pressed down on her. Olivia's mind raced through every interaction from the evening. Each time she had laughed or spoken to someone else, she remembered Adrian watching her. She remembered the way he had smiled politely when she glanced his way, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The thought made her stomach twist. She had taken him for granted, assuming that he would always be there, supporting her without needing acknowledgement. She had always depended on Adrian's quiet strength, his unwavering support, his belief in her even when she doubted herself. And now, for the first time, she realized that such devotion could not be assumed forever. Hours later, Olivia sent another message. "Are you okay?" Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating. Each word felt like a small plea. She wanted him to know she was worried. She wanted him to come back to her, to reassure her that everything was fine between them. But deep down she feared the answer. She feared that maybe Adrian was tired of always being the one to wait, to support, to stand quietly while the world celebrated her achievements. She feared he might leave, even though leaving was something she had never imagined for him. Across the city, Adrian sat alone in a small diner, the neon sign outside casting a pale glow over his table. A half-empty cup of coffee sat before him, untouched. The hum of conversation and clinking cutlery surrounded him, but he felt detached, as if he were in another world. He wasn't angry at Olivia. Not at all. In fact, his love for her hadn't changed, but something inside him had shifted. Tonight had made him realize that even the most patient hearts have limits. He had supported Olivia for years, celebrated her successes, and believed in her when she doubted herself. But tonight, he felt invisible. The thought was not meant to punish Olivia, but it reminded him that he, too, needed acknowledgement and care. Adrian's phone buzzed once. Then again, he glanced at it and saw messages from Olivia. "Where did you go tonight? And are you okay?" He read them slowly, feeling the weight of her concern. The words were comforting in one way and frustrating in another. She had reached out, yes, but she hadn't seen him when it mattered. She hadn't noticed him in the crowd. He set the phone down without replying. The answers weren't simple, and he wasn't ready to send them. He needed space to think, to process his feelings without being swept into the excitement and chaos of her world. Meanwhile, Olivia's anxiety continued to build. She replayed the party in her mind repeatedly. Every interaction, every laugh, every congratulation felt tainted by the knowledge that she had failed to notice the one person who mattered most. Her pulse quickened at the memory of his eyes searching for her, his quiet presence at the edge of the crowd, and the moment she realized he had disappeared. That realization had hit her harder than any celebration or recognition she had received that night. She understood now with sudden clarity how important Adrian had always been to her, not just in supporting her career, but in being her constant companion, her confidant, the person who made her feel safe and understood in a world that often overlooked her. The morning came slowly, bringing with it the light that made every empty corner of the apartment seem more noticeable. Olivia still couldn't sleep. Her thoughts kept returning to Adrian's absence, and she felt a strange combination of fear, regret, and longing. She remembered how he had always been there when she needed him, how he had shared her burdens without complaint, how his quiet encouragement had kept her going through the toughest days. And now, for the first time, she faced the possibility that he might not be there anymore. At least, not in the way he had always been. Adrian remained in the diner long after the sun had risen. He stared out the window at the streets, the early traffic, the people hurrying along their morning routines. He didn't speak, didn't move much, just sat and thought about everything that had happened. He considered replying to Olivia's messages, but didn't. Words felt insufficient. Nothing could capture the mixture of hurt, love, and concern he felt. For years, he had chosen to stand behind her, to let her shine in the spotlight while he remained in the shadows. But tonight had reminded him that being unseen, even for someone you loved, could become a heavy burden. By late morning, Olivia decided she couldn't wait any longer. She grabbed her coat and left the apartment, walking briskly through the city streets. Her mind was focused, her heart pounding with nervous anticipation. She headed to places she knew Adrian frequented, hoping to find him, to see him, to apologize in person if she could. She replayed the night over and over in her mind, thinking of every glance she had given him, every moment she had been distracted by others. She didn't want to lose him. She realized she might have taken his patience for granted. And now, faced with the possibility of losing him, she felt a desperation she hadn't anticipated. Adrian remained unaware of Olivia's movements. He drank his coffee slowly, occasionally glancing at the messages on his phone, his mind occupied by memories of the party and the unspoken tension that had built between them. He thought about the subtle cues he had noticed, the way Olivia's eyes had avoided him at certain moments, the way she had laughed with others while barely acknowledging his presence. Each memory was a small sting, and yet he still cared deeply for her. He still loved her. But tonight had reminded him that love required more than admiration. It required acknowledgement, presence, and mutual attention. Olivia reached a quiet park where Adrian sometimes came to think. She stood at the edge of the path, scanning the benches and the surrounding trees. Her heart raced as she imagined finding him, sitting silently, lost in thought. She wanted to approach him, to tell him everything she felt, to explain that she hadn't meant to hurt him. But she also feared that words would be too late, that the damage from her neglect, however unintentional, might already have made a mark too deep to erase. Adrian finally decided to leave the diner. He walked slowly, hands in his pockets, his eyes scanning the streets without really seeing. His thoughts returned repeatedly to Olivia, to the night, to the subtle ache of being unseen by someone who mattered more than anyone else. He thought about their shared moments over the past 3 years. The laughter, the late-night talks, the quiet support he had offered her without ever asking for recognition. The night had shifted something inside him, a gentle but firm reminder that even love needed care and attention to survive. As Adrian turned a corner, he almost collided with Olivia. She stepped back, startled, her breath quick and uneven. Their eyes met. For the first time since the party, the distance between them vanished, replaced by the weight of everything left unsaid. Olivia opened her mouth, but words failed her. She wanted to apologize, to explain, to convince him that her oversight had been unintentional. Adrian looked at her, his expression calm but distant, his eyes reflecting the quiet hurt he had carried through the night. Olivia's chest tightened. She realized that this was the moment she had feared. She had chased him through her mind all night, and now, facing him, she understood the truth. Love was fragile, even between two people who had shared years of trust, laughter, and support. She could not assume his patience would last forever. She had to act, to acknowledge, to repair the bond before it slipped further away. Adrian finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "Olivia," he said, and she felt the weight of that single word. It carried years of shared history, unspoken hurt, and lingering affection. "Why didn't you notice me tonight?" The question wasn't angry. It was quiet, reflective, the kind of question that demanded honesty. Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. She knew she had failed him, and the pain in his tone made her heart ache. She opened her mouth to respond, but struggled to find the right words. I didn't mean to," she finally whispered, her voice trembling. "I got caught up in everything, the congratulations, the attention. I forgot the most important person." Adrian walked slowly down the quiet streets, the early morning sun casting long shadows across the pavement. He still couldn't shake the feeling of last night, of the party, of Olivia's laughter mingling with the applause while he stood at the edge of the crowd. He remembered the way she had looked when she finally realized he was gone, the sudden panic in her eyes, the subtle regret that flickered across her face. That moment had left a mark on him, a reminder that even love, no matter how steady, required care. He had always been patient, always supportive, always present, but last night had tested that patience. It wasn't anger that lingered, it was the quiet realization that even someone as devoted as him could feel invisible. Meanwhile, Olivia had been pacing through the streets, her heels clicking against the concrete as her mind raced with memories of the party. She thought about every interaction, every glance, every laugh that had left Adrian unseen. Her chest ached with guilt. She had celebrated her promotion, yes, but at what cost? She had overlooked the one person who had always been her anchor. The one person who had quietly encouraged her through long nights and self-doubt. The thought of losing him, even temporarily, filled her with fear. She had to find him, had to make things right before the distance grew any wider. She headed toward the small coffee shop she knew Adrian often visited when he wanted to think. Her heart pounded as she approached, wondering if he would even be there. She feared rejection, feared that her oversight had left a permanent scar. But she couldn't stand still any longer. Adrian had always been her constant, and the thought of losing him, of letting a night of distraction and celebration drive a wedge between them, was unbearable. Adrian entered the coffee shop quietly, finding a corner by the window. The aroma of fresh coffee filled the space, but it didn't comfort him. He ordered a cup, barely noticing it as he sat down, his mind replaying the party again and again. He thought about Olivia's eyes avoiding his, about the moments he had hoped she would notice him, about the polite smile she had given when she finally did. It wasn't anger that gnawed at him, it was hurt, subtle but deep. The kind of hurt that made him question whether patience could last forever as he sat there. He thought about their years together. He remembered the late nights when she doubted herself. And he had stayed awake just to remind her that she was capable, that she was enough. He remembered her small victories, her quiet triumphs, her smiles when she thought no one was watching. And he realized that while he had celebrated her successes, it also silently hoped for acknowledgement, for her to notice that he was always there. That hope had gone unfulfilled at the party, and it left a strange emptiness in his chest. Olivia pushed the coffee shop door open and stepped inside, scanning the tables nervously. Her eyes landed on Adrian, seated alone, looking out the window. Relief and guilt collided in her chest. She took a deep breath and approached him slowly. "Adrian," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. He didn't turn immediately, and she felt a pang of fear. Had she waited too long? Had she let the night create a distance that couldn't be bridged? Finally, Adrian looked at her, his expression calm but reserved. "Olivia," he said, the single word carrying the weight of their shared history, the unspoken hurt and lingering affection. "Why didn't you notice me tonight?" His voice was steady, reflective, not angry, but it pierced her heart. Olivia felt tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. She had failed him in a moment when she should have been aware, attentive, and loving. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words felt inadequate. I didn't mean to," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I got caught up in everything, the congratulations, the attention. I forgot the most important person. Her honesty was raw, unpolished, but it carried weight. Adrian studied her face, seeing the genuine remorse and vulnerability reflected in her eyes. It wasn't enough to erase the night's events, but it was a start. The tension between them was heavy, the air thick with unspoken emotions, memories, and longing. Adrian remained silent for a moment, taking in her words. He wanted to believe her, wanted to feel reassured, but trust had to be rebuilt. Actions mattered more than words, even when the words were sincere. He remembered how many times he had been there, how he had quietly supported her without asking for anything in return. And while he still loved her deeply, he knew that love required mutual recognition, attention, and care. He could not assume that his patience would always be enough. Olivia stepped a little closer, though she still left a small space between them. "I don't expect everything to be fixed right away," she said softly, "but I want to fight for us if you'll let me." Her eyes glistened with tears, her vulnerability clear. She was offering honesty, a willingness to confront mistakes and rebuild what had been strained. Adrian looked at her, considering her words carefully. He could see the sincerity, the fear, the hope. Love had been tested, but it hadn't been broken. Not yet. "Adrian," she continued, her voice gaining strength, "I know I made a mistake. I let the celebration take over my attention, and I forgot to notice you. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was caught up in everything, and I forgot the one person who always stood by me. I'm sorry." Her words flowed rapidly, spilling out like a river of regret and longing. Adrian felt a pang in his chest, the kind of pang that reminded him why he loved her in the first place. She was human, flawed, but willing to face her mistakes and make amends. He finally spoke, his voice soft but steady. "I just want to know that I matter to you, Olivia. Not just tonight, but always." His words were simple, yet heavy with meaning. They carried years of shared experiences, quiet sacrifices, and deep affection. Olivia nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. She understood that actions from here on out would define the path forward. Words could not undo the hurt. Only consistent care and attention could. For a long moment, they stood there in silence, letting the emotions between them settle. The city outside bustled with morning activity, but in that coffee shop, time seemed to slow. Both Adrian and Olivia realized that the night had changed everything, but it had not ended their story. They had faced the consequences of neglect, the tension of unspoken hurt, and the fragile reality that love required more than admiration. It required presence, acknowledgement, and care. Olivia took a deep breath and stepped closer. "I don't want to take your patience for granted anymore," she said softly. "I want to be present, to notice you, to share this life with you in a way that doesn't make you feel invisible. I want us to grow together, not apart." Her eyes searched his, seeking reassurance, hoping that he still felt the same connection that had drawn them together years ago. Adrian studied her for a long moment. He saw the honesty in her eyes, the fear and hope intertwined. He remembered the early days, the small acts of love and support, the quiet moments that had built a foundation strong enough to survive challenges. And he realized that despite the hurt, he still loved her deeply. He wanted to see if they could bridge the gap, rebuild the trust, and move forward together. "I still love you," he said quietly, his voice carrying both relief and caution. "But we have to be honest with each other every day. We can't let moments like last night create distance between us. We have to notice each other, care for each other, and fight for this relationship." His words were firm but gentle, a reminder that love required effort from both sides. Olivia nodded, tears streaming freely now. She reached out and took his hand, the touch small but full of significance. "I understand," she whispered. "I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. I won't let my successes make me forget what's important. You're the most important person in my life." Her voice was steady now, filled with determination and love. Adrian felt a warmth in his chest, a glimmer of hope that their bond could survive this test. They sat down together, their hands still intertwined, and talked for hours. They spoke about the party, the mistakes, the misunderstandings, and the fear of losing each other. They shared memories, revisited small moments that had built their relationship, and promised to communicate better in the future. Each word, each confession, each reassurance slowly bridged the gap that had formed overnight. By the time the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the streets, they had reached a fragile but hopeful understanding. Olivia had apologized, and Adrian had expressed his feelings without anger, just honesty. They knew that rebuilding trust would take time. That love required constant attention and care. But in that moment, they both felt the deep connection that had drawn them together years ago. As they left the coffee shop, walking side by side, the city around them seemed brighter. The events of the night before no longer hung heavily over them. Instead, they carried the lessons learned of the importance of noticing each other, of being present, and of choosing love even after mistakes. Each step they took together was a promise to fight for their relationship, to cherish the quiet moments as much as the celebrations, and to never let success or distraction make them forget each other. Adrian squeezed Olivia's hand gently, and she looked up at him with a small smile. "We'll be okay," she said softly. He nodded, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't felt since the party began.